Georgia Tech 2-0 for the first time in quite a while and ranked in the AP Top 25. Welcome to another edition of ATL Prime Sports. I'm JJ Jurjevich. Joining me this evening is our producer, Wayne Ridenauer in wonderful Memphis, Tennessee. And on the phone this evening is Todd TC Corder. You can catch us all at ATL Prime Sports on Facebook, Instagram, X, and of course, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Our personal X's at JJ Get You One for myself, at RWY Jr. for Wayne, at Corder Todd for TC Todd Corder, and at LG for Real Though, who's calling an Adairsville High School senior night game tonight for their softball team. Go Tigers, and Larry, have a good call. Wayne, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Well, man, I'm doing pretty good. I'm looking forward to Auburn playing Cal. This is going to be an important game because I think, as far as non-conference goes, this is not necessarily a cupcake of a game because anything could happen. But I'm excited about that this weekend. And how about you, TC? How's everything with you?
Oh, fantastic. There was a situation last night in the Braves game where Whit Merrifield got hit in the back of the head with a pitch. And Whit Merrifield's comments were very interesting. He said pitchers are throwing just to throw. They're throwing as hard as they can. I'm paraphrasing him. He said they have no control where the ball goes. It's very dangerous. I don't like the direction the game is going. I agree with him 100%. How about you guys? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've talked to a couple of my friends, Todd. I've mentioned this off air, who pitched at the AAA organization for the White Sox, and they said I'd rather have a guy throwing 100 with sticky stuff on his hands and he knows where it's going than throwing 98 without the sticky substance and he doesn't know where it's going. So I think a lot of players share the same sentiment. I think control is, we mentioned this, control is out the window in Major League Baseball today. It seems like it's all velocity instead of the Greg Maddoxes and the Tom Glavines who paint the corners and move speeds and change pitches and uses all 20 inches of the plate or whatever it is, and you just don't see guys pitching anymore. You just see guys throwing. So Todd, I tend to agree with you. Wayne, you want a quick thought on that?
No, man, I hadn't even been following that story. Baseball's pretty much over for me.
I'm doing well, just prepping for the SIAC game of the week. The 1-0 Shaw Bears travel to the 0-1 Albany State Golden Rams. 6 p.m. Saturday. Jamie Walker on the play-by-play, myself on the color. Check us out on ESPN Plus. Again, 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday evening. What's on tap? We'll have the Dave Cohen report and our Pick Six. Pretty short and sweet show today. Georgia State loses to Georgia Tech 35-12. Plays host to UT Chattanooga this week. With that being said, we bring you the Dave Cohen report right here on ATL Prime Sports. Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers. Thanks for coming on. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing good. Do I have my own report now on ATL Prime Sports? Have I really risen to that level amongst this crew?
Now, you have
yes,
risen.
You have.
Todd and I came up with it today.
I came up with it today.
Dave Cohen report via ATL Prime Sports.
If I accomplish nothing in the rest of my career, I've got my own report as part of ATL Prime Sports weekly podcast.
Yeah.
But just think about it. We can call it the Dave Cohen. I was going to say, I'm sorry, we can call it the Dave Cohen report with Georgia State athletics, or just the Dave Cohen report. Man, I don't really care which way we call it, but you let us know what you want to call it.
I'm just happy to be on with you guys. I'm easy.
Well, thanks, Dave.
Easy. That's
and I'll start things off, Dave. A goal line stand by Georgia Tech to stall Georgia State's opening drive. Is that where you felt the momentum shift in that game early for the Panthers?
Well, I don't know that I would say it's a momentum shift, but it certainly was a huge opportunity that we were not able to take advantage of. I say we, I'm talking Georgia State football. I mean, we marched that ball down to the 1 yard line and just could not punch it in, and went for it on 4th and a yard, and Georgia Tech rose to the occasion and we came away with no points. Georgia State, again, later in the ball game, got down to the 1 yard line and had to settle for a field goal. So, I looked at this game, which was a final score of 35-12, as I'm not saying definitively that Georgia State would have won the ball game, but certainly left some opportunities to score and make it more interesting and put Georgia Tech on their back heels. We let some opportunities get away. And then we had one bad turnover, and that was the miscommunication on a snap that Georgia Tech recovered at the Georgia State 20-yard line. They ended up scoring. And then we had a lapse defensively when Malik Rutherford got about, 10, 15 yards behind the defense, and Haynes King spotted him, got him the football, and, again, a relatively easy situation for them to put points on the board. There was some positive. Christian Veillere got his first start as quarterback for Georgia State, 19 of 34, 210 yards and a touchdown. Dorian Fleming, in Amon Green's absence, our starting tight end. Amon Green had to miss the game due to an injury, so next man up. Dorian Fleming had a pretty good ball game, ended up with 4 catches, a 24-yard touchdown reception. This is a kid that started 4 games last year under Sean Elliott. So I thought that was a positive. The offensive line did not give up a sack and led the way for 3 running backs, Freddie Brox, Savion Wilkerson, and Michael Dukes to rush, along with Christian Veillere for a total of 150 yards. Again, just did not take advantage of some of the opportunities. And I thought our defense, for the most part, played pretty well. Justin Abraham, who kind of anchors in the middle, ended up with 11 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. A transfer from Maine, starting on the defensive line, defensive end, Dorian Royal had 7 tackles. So again, you look at that score, 35-12. If you give me 2 touchdowns on the two occasions that Georgia State got down to the 1 yard line, well, now you're adding 14 points. Well, one of them we settled for 3. So now you're adding 11 points to the 12 that we scored, or the 10 that we would have scored minus the field goal. What I'm saying is the trajectory of the game could have looked a little different had we taken advantage of the opportunities that were presented.
I agree 100%. Georgia State was in that game. Don't let the score lie to you, folks. Georgia Tech took advantage of opportunities given to them, and otherwise, the game of football always comes down to 4 or 5 plays, and those 4 or 5 plays go the Panthers' way. It could have been a different result. Todd, go ahead.
Dave, you mentioned it. You were spot on with it. Missed opportunities really hurt Georgia State. It was a game, frankly, I thought they had many opportunities to potentially win the game. Georgia State over the years has done really well against the big boys in non-conference play. Now you're not going to play as big as name this week. Have you been to practice? What have the coaches been saying to the players? I mean, even though they lost, there's still a lot of season left. It's only the first week. There's a lot of positive things to take from the game. What are they working on in practice this week, and go from there?
Yes, I'm at practice at least 3 days a week, sometimes 4, and getting to talk to head coach Del McGee on down, as well as some of the key players. They know that they left some opportunities on the field last Saturday night at Georgia Tech, but there's nothing you can do about that now other than get back to practice, have a good week of practice, and try to clean up some things and focus in on some of the areas like short yardage at the goal line, being able to punch the ball in and come away with touchdowns and not have to settle for field goals. More reps for Christian Veillere, the starting quarterback, and him becoming more and more familiar with his receivers like Talik Williams and Ted Hurst and P.D. Tucker and D.J. Riles, guys that he targeted on Saturday night against Georgia Tech. That repetition only makes things better between quarterback and receiver, quarterback and tight end chemistry. And again, the same theme that you'll hear in locker rooms around the country. Cannot have a letdown, cannot overlook Chattanooga. Chattanooga had a tough afternoon up in Knoxville this past Saturday, 69-3 in a loss at Tennessee. And I was talking to a buddy of mine on the UT Chattanooga radio, on the radio broadcast earlier today. And I said, well, I think that score reflects more on Tennessee being back and being more of a powerhouse than it does on UT Chattanooga. Obviously, there's a major talent difference. I told him, I said, we played that game 5 years ago. Now, Georgia State won that game 5 years ago in 2019 in Knoxville, but that's a different Tennessee team. This is a much better, much more powerful Tennessee football team. They're back. They may not be able to, we'll see how they do. They may not be quite at the level that Georgia is, but Tennessee is right there in the Southeastern Conference. So UT Chattanooga, preseason top 10, preseason top 15 FCS program. They're predicted to be a really good 1AA program. And so Georgia State coaches, players know that they can't come in and just say, oh, this is an FCS program. We can just, look at it. I don't want to say take it lightly. We can go through the motions. They're not going through any motions. They're getting ready for their home opener. Georgia State is. And, it's the first of 4 straight home games with Vanderbilt looming, followed by Georgia Southern, followed by Old Dominion. So they know they've got to, number one, win a home game in front of a home crowd and get that record to 1-1, and then turn their attention to Vanderbilt.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Defense gave up 225 on the ground last week. They'll have to shore that up against the Mocs of UT Chattanooga. And you nailed it on the head, Dave. They're an upper echelon FCS team, and you can't go through the motions. What's Del McGee telling to the guys? Stay focused, the basics. But give us a little bit more in depth on that defense. And you and Ben called it last week. The gentleman, it's blanking my name. I've been thinking of it. The transfer, he made the interception last week. He looked pretty good.
Kenyatta Watson, who transferred from Georgia. He transferred to Georgia State from Georgia Tech. What a great experience for him. I'm sure he would take a win over getting an interception in a split second, but to go back over to Bobby Dodd Stadium where you started your collegiate career, come in with Georgia State and get a pick on Haynes King, that will be one of the highlights for him so far this season. But yeah, look, the quarterback for UT Chattanooga, Artopius, I forget his first name, good quarterback, but he's not Haynes King. Haynes King is every bit of the 6'5", 6'6", big dude, transfer from Texas A&M. I watched him against Florida State. I watched him against Georgia State, obviously, as we called that game on the radio network. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and he showed again why on Saturday night against us. So it'll be a little bit different. But, one thing that Coach McGee and the assistants that I talked to and the players, they don't focus as much on the opponent as they do focusing within on themselves and how we play. Look, they know that UT Chattanooga is a good program. You're not ranked preseason within the top 10 in FCS if you're not expected to be one of the top FCS programs and there's not talent on that roster. There obviously is. Transfer portal has certainly changed things with how teams put their rosters together and how quickly you can, turn things around from one season to the next. But, again, Georgia State is focused more on within than they are on who the opponent is. They will scout UT Chattanooga. They have scouted UT Chattanooga. They've been working on it all week in practice. But first and foremost, it's about Georgia State football more so than it is about UT Chattanooga football. If you get the ball on the 1 yard line and you got 4 opportunities to punch it in, you got to punch it in.
Got to punch it in.
So I think it's more about Georgia State than it is about who we're playing.
Dave, real quick, what do you think about the new 2-minute timeout in college? Yay, nay, indifferent?
There's so many timeouts in the college game anyway because of television, and this working SIAC games on ESPN Plus. I'm radio only for football, but I'm on ESPN Plus for basketball and baseball. Television rules the roost, and so when they have commercials and inventory to fill, you and I are going to be throwing to those commercials. Back after this timeout, here, this is Georgia State football on ESPN Plus, so on and so forth. I'm just paraphrasing there, but I'm not surprised by the extra timeout. And I guess for the most part, depending on how you're playing, it could slow it can slow your momentum a little bit, or it could help you. It could help you if you're on your back feet. So I think what's another timeout in college athletics and from our standpoint with regards to a collegiate broadcast? It's another time that we take a break and throw it to commercials. What's one more going to do? For us.
Why not?
Well, here in Memphis, I noticed this at the Tiger basketball games. They have a sponsor now for the official replay, and it makes me wonder, all these replays that happen in the last part of the game, is it because the sponsor called up and said, "Hey, we didn't get up on the big board during the game. You need to talk to the refs. We need to have a replay, a timeout, so they can go over and check, make sure they got the call right." Because they're all going to start getting sponsored now. Oh, it looks like we have an injured player on the field. It's brought to you by Allstate.
Again, television, corporate sponsorship, that is the tail that wags the dog.
Yeah.
So nothing surprises me anymore in the world of college and pro athletics.
Dave, the college game to me is getting more and more closer to the pro game. Every day you see it, like you mentioned, the 2-minute warning. The kids are going to get their money and et cetera. It's definitely reached semi-pro status. I want to ask you, based on what you saw against Georgia Tech, do you think Georgia State, by what you've seen so far, I know I'm jumping ahead, can they compete for the conference? Are they good enough to compete for the Sun Belt this year?
Well, that's the $64,000 question, Todd. We've got 50
Yes,
new players on this roster that just played their first game together in, an excited environment on a Saturday night at Georgia Tech. And I thought that other than the one turnover and the inability to punch it in twice on, from the 1 yard line, that Georgia State played pretty well. They rushed the ball for 150 yards. Offensive line did not give up a sack. They averaged, per carry, 5.2 yards per rush. One of the problems was third downs. Georgia State was only 3 of 12 on third down conversions. Obviously, that's got to get a little bit better. But it's hard to tell, after 1 week, because historically, Appalachian State, last couple of years, James Madison, Troy, obviously the defending champions, Ragin' Cajuns of Louisiana. There's been so many players that have transferred from school A to school B, and in some instances from school A to school C, depending on how many times they've transferred. Texas State is another school. They ended up getting the starting quarterback from James Madison, Jordan McLeod. Texas State is picked to win the Sun Belt West, and why wouldn't you after the way he led James Madison, to the season they had a year ago? I think it's too early to say, who the. I think you can step back and say Appalachian State, Texas State, Troy, James Madison, maybe Georgia Southern. Look at Georgia Southern; they scored a ton of points, but gave up 56. So. Yeah. I don't know if we can say after 1 week, who the front runners are going to be. I think by, week 4, the dust will start to settle a little bit, and we'll see. This is the time of year where you see the Sun Belt step up in some instances, like we did against Georgia Tech and like we'll do next week against Vanderbilt, and play Power Fives. But we'll find out pretty quickly once we get into Sun Belt Conference play. The Sun Belt East, as you guys and I have talked about, is a beast every single season.
Yeah.
Beast in the
The
East.
transfer portal changes everything, Dave. Sorry, JJ. The transfer portal makes everything so unknown.
Right, and that's why I say a lot of these coaches don't necessarily know, and I put know, K-N-O-W in quotations, exactly what that football chemistry is going to look like until we play two games, 3 games. I mean, think about it. Christian Veilleux started his first game. He's already been at Penn State and Pitt. He just started his first game at Georgia State and had a pretty good ball game. Freddie Brock has been here, but Savion Wilkerson transferred from Colorado. Michael Dukes transferred from South Florida after starting at Clemson. You know, these guys, the guys that are new to the program, that question, how many of these transfers will step in and be impact players? And I don't mean just at Georgia State. You know, good example with what we just saw. Haynes King transfers from Texas A&M, where he played for Jimbo Fisher, to Georgia Tech. He has been an impact player last year and so far this year for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Will Christian Veilleux be an impact player for Georgia State? You know, when we look back at it 4 weeks from now, when he's played 3 or 4 ball games, the same for Savion Wilkerson and the same for Michael Dukes. Those are the questions that we really cannot answer until probably 2 to 3 weeks from now.
You're listening to Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers. You can find Dave on X at GA State Voice. And that concludes our Dave Cohen report. Dave, thanks for coming on. As always, tell our listeners how they can catch your call on Saturday.
All right, well, in Atlanta, we'll be on the 50,000-watt, 88.5 FM WRAS. North Georgia, 97.5 FM WGTJ. Download the GSU Athletics mobile app. Broadcast will be streamed there. TuneIn Radio mobile app. It'll be streamed there on the website. You can go to wras.org.org. Easy access to the audio there. And multiple ways to take Georgia State football with you, whether you're at the game, whether you're watching and you want to turn the TV announcer's sound down and listen to us, or if you're at the game and you want to bring not necessarily a radio, but now your iPhone is like a radio anyway. So multiple ways to listen. I just hope we play well on Saturday night and get that record to 1-1 and get Del McGee a win along with the rest of the Panthers in his home opener.
Yeah. No, are
right.
y'all still on the Low Country Radio?
Thanks for reminding me. You are still on lowcountryradio.com, website out of Savannah, Georgia. And we'll also be on WRBJradio.com as well out of Dublin, Georgia.
Excellent.
Several options, listeners, to catch the voice of the Georgia State Panthers, Dave Cohen, on the call versus the UT Chat Mocs on Saturday afternoon. Thanks, Dave. That concludes our Dave Cohen report, the first one of many.
All right, guys. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Thank you, Dave. Have a good one.
All right. Take it easy.
Thank you, Dave.
Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers. You can find Dave on X at GA State Voice. Guys, short and sweet, as I mentioned, we're doing the Pick Six. It's a full weekend of football, NFL and college. We picked 6 football games for the upcoming week. Wednesday spreads are from ESPNBet.com. Let's kick things off, pun intended, with our records. Larry's kicking our tails. He's 9-3 with 2 really good weeks. I believe a 5-1 and a 4-2. Wayne, you're in second place. You've had 2 good weeks yourself, 2 4-2s. You're 8-4 overall. I am 500 at 3-3 each week. And TC is bringing in the rear at 4-8. He has been 2-4 the first 2 weeks. So let's get this thing started. Let's all go 5-1 this week. Let's see what happens. Number 3, Texas, 1-0, travels to the Big House in Ann Arbor, Michigan, to take on the number 10 Michigan Wolverines, also 1-0. Texas is 7.5-point road favorites. Over/under in that game is 42.5. That is Saturday, noon Eastern on Fox. That's the big noon kickoff. Todd, we'll let you start it off, man. Your alma mater. Do they get the job done?
Well, I'll tell you what, based on what I saw against last week against Fresno State not only had a chance to stay in the game, but to potentially win it. In the fourth quarter, the Wolverines were sloppy offensively, defensively, led by Will Johnson. They were really good. He made an interception that put away Fresno State, but this is not Fresno State. They're playing, no disrespect, Texas, and this is a big step up. Now, first games are really deceiving. You see teams struggle in the first game, and they make their biggest improvement between games 1 and 2, and then all of a sudden you go, wow. So will Michigan make that huge improvement between games 1 and 2? Sharon Moore thinks so. They're going with the walk-on Davis, the Warren kid. You know what? Michigan's going to give it all they got. They're going to play really well. What did you say? The spread was 7.5?
7.5. Make the pick.
I'll take Texas. You know, I say when in doubt, go to the SEC. It bit me in the buttocks last week. I always seem to start out slow with this. I'm a slow starter this year. Hopefully I'll pick up, and we'll start with this one. I think Texas will win. They have experience at the quarterback position. It's all about the quarterback position. I like Texas to cover, but just barely.
Wayne, what say you?
Well, I'm going to have to go with Texas on this one, just simply because Michigan is still, I feel like, getting used to the new coach. And Texas in the SEC, I think, has given them a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because they want to be the best in the SEC, even though they're kind of new. And I think this is one way that they're going to try to prove it.
I like it. Larry is going Texas to cover as well. So am I. Hook 'em horns. Sharon Moore will have to get the passing game going to beat Texas. He won't be able to run the ball 35 times in a row to beat this team. You're going to have to get Davis Warren involved. He's going to have to be better than 15 to 25 and 118 yards with the score and an interception. Going to have to get a lot more out of your quarterback there. Texas held Colorado State to just 74 yards passing last week, and their 52-0 win against a pretty decent Colorado State team. So I like the Horns. I like the Horns pretty big. They showed me a lot last week. And, again, Colorado State's historically a pretty decent average football team. So to put 52 points on them and shut them out, it's pretty impressive. Our second game of the week, again, that's everybody going with Texas to cover there. Second game of the week, the ranked Yellow Jackets, number 23, Georgia Tech, 2-0, atop the ACC right now, might I add, travels to Syracuse, New York to take on the 1-0 Orangemen. Georgia Tech's 2.5-point road favorites. Over under in that one. Vegas expects it to be high scoring at 61.5. 12 o'clock p.m. on the ACC network. Georgia Tech's rushing attack, it's for real. 190 yards versus Florida State. 225 yards, as I mentioned earlier, on the ground versus Georgia State. Syracuse's passing attack looked really good versus with Ohio State transfer Kyle McCord. He threw for 354 yards and 4 scores. Did throw the interception. Pretty accurate with the football, 27-39. But I'll go with the hot rushing attack from Georgia Tech. Syracuse gave up 255 yards on the ground to the Ohio Bobcats. So Haynes King and Jamal Haynes, the Haynes combo, will run for over 130 yards in my opinion. If that's my prediction, I think they'll combine for about 130 on the ground, and they get the road win and move to 2-0 in ACC play. Give me the Jackets to cover. Wayne, what you got?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Tech as well on this one. I haven't heard much about Syracuse, the Orangemen, in a long time, and it just makes me feel like maybe they don't have anything going on up there. So we'll take Tech on this one.
If Syracuse has quite a bit of momentum, Wayne, they got Georgia analyst and sideline coach Fran Brown. I forgot exactly what department he was in, but he went up there, brought Kyle McCord with him, and he's got people excited up there in that Courier Dome.
Well,
TC, who you got, Jackets or Orangemen?
I'll take Syracuse to cover. Playing on the road is totally different than playing at home. Syracuse with a dome environment. I'll tell you what, Georgia Tech, I know everybody's excited and happy they're 2-0, but they could easily be 0-2. I know they played really well against Florida State, but they had to hold on at the end to win it. Number one. Number two, I know the ifs are coming out here, but like Dave said, Georgia State did not play they blew their opportunities. Kyle McCord's a really good quarterback, and he had a good year for Ohio State last year. Almost took them down the field to beat Michigan at the end. I think Syracuse will cover the spread. It's going to come down to a kick at the end, a 1 or 2 point win. Who knows who will do it? This is the first ACC road test for, I know the first game was in Dublin, but it was a neutral field, obviously, or neutral situation. But I'm not totally sold on Georgia Tech yet.
Yeah, I like Tech. They traveled overseas, came back, handled adversity against a pretty good Georgia State team. I think a lot of people are seeing what Georgia Tech and Buster Faulkner in this offense is about. Haynes King's a really good quarterback. He's a former 5-star, and he's at the helm. Larry's thinking what I'm thinking. He's taking the Jackets to cover as well. Let's go to our third and final college game. The Volunteers of Tennessee coming in at 1-0 and number 14 in the country on a neutral site game versus number 24 NC State, 1-0 as well. Tennessee's 8-point favorites in the ACC-SEC battle. Over-under in that one's a high one, 60.5. 7:30 p.m. on ABC. Wayne, what say you?
Well, I have to take UT on this one, simply because it's an SEC team. It's my mom's team, so why not?
I like it. Tennessee covers. TC, what you got?
You can't go against Mama, and you can't go against the SEC. Give me Tennessee. I think Tennessee is going to be a surprise SEC contender.
Yeah, I like Tennessee too. Both these teams are coming off wins versus Southern Conference. Tennessee just looked a lot better doing it. And Dave mentioned it. UT Chat, Upper Echelon FCS program, NC State and Grayson McCall, the Coastal Carolina transfer, threw for 300, but doing it against Western Carolina is a little bit different than Nico Iamalavada. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm going to have to try and get used to it. But Nico looks really, really good, and he looks like the real deal for the Tennessee Vols. I like the Vols as well, and Nico should probably go for about 300 again. They like to air it out in Heupel's offense. I like Tennessee, and I like Tennessee pretty big from what I saw after 1 week. But again, like Todd said, it is one game. It's hard to judge. 2-3 games down the line, you really kind of get an idea what your football team is. Let's go from the college game to the NFL game. And, of course, we got Larry. Larry's taking Tennessee to cover as well, so we're all going SEC there. And Ravens, Chiefs, to kick things off, ended in an extremely close game in the playoffs last year, 17-10 shocker. This kicks off the NFL season. We'll see if Taylor Swift will be in the building, but that's Thursday night, 8:20 p.m. on NBC/Peacock. I'll start this one off. The Chiefs are 3-point favorites. The over-under is 47.5. Look, I've said this before. When teams are distracted getting rings, they tend to not play well. The Chiefs will be getting rings and distracted. The Ravens have a bad taste in their mouth, as I mentioned, from that 17-10 playoff loss. I think Roquan Smith and that D will get after Mahomes early and often. I think Derrick Henry will reintroduce himself as one of the NFL's best running backs. And Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, they'll get the job done. I like John Harbaugh and the Ravens to win this game and get a little bit. It won't be a sweet revenge, but it'll be a little bit on the road to open up the season in Arrowhead. Give me the Ravens and those points. Wayne, what say you?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and pick those dancing Kansas City Chiefs.
I like it. Chiefs cover.
Hey,
TC, what you got?
Hey, you know what? Don't press in, as Herm Edwards said, and don't bet against the best quarterback in today's game. Patrick Mahomes remembers a year ago what the Lions did to him on Thursday night. It won't happen again. The Chiefs and Andrew Reid, they will be ready. They're trying to go for a three-peat. It's step one and a lot of steps going up the NFL stairwell. You know, I just like Mahomes. You can't bet against him.
Larry takes the Chiefs as well, so it's 3 Chiefs versus 1 Raven. I'm taking 2 birds, and I'll take a cat. That's a little preview for my Sunday going here. So Falcons host the Steelers and their former coach, the Arthur Smiths of the world, and that's the offensive coordinator. You're going to have Justin Fields, the Georgia boy, coming in as a backup. The starter will be old Russell Wilson. Steelers at Falcons. It's a 1 p.m. Sunday kick on Fox. Atlanta is a 3.5-point home favorite. Over/under in that one is 41 and a hook. Look, I'll tee this bad boy off again. I like the Falcons. A lot of momentum in the offseason. A lot of recent momentum with Judon and Simmons coming. I like Mooney. I like this Drake London. I like the Kyle Pitts with Kirk Cousins, and I like the running backs Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier to really make a push on that front and kind of get the Arthur Smith era behind the Atlanta Falcons with the big home opening W to start off the Raheem Morris era with the bang. Give me the Dirty Birds to cover at home. Wayne, what say you? This is the real deal now.
Yeah, I'm picking the Falcons on this one simply because I'm a Falcons fan. But I've got some neighbors down the street that are big Steelers fans. You know, they got the placards on their car and big deal every time they play. There's lots of people over there watching it. And I think after Atlanta wins, I'm going to buy a pie from Kroger and bring over there and just remind him to stay humble.
Larry's taking the Falcons as well at home. Todd, tell me you're dogging the Falcons yet again.
You guys are suckers on a stick. But you know what? God bless you. But you know what? The Falcons did time after time after time a season ago, let the team down, gave up the winning drive. Russell Wilson's a veteran quarterback. Pittsburgh's defense is better than Atlanta's, even with Atlanta's new additions. I like the Steelers. It'll be a home game for them. You'll have more Steelers fans than Falcons fans. I've been to many Pittsburgh and Atlanta games in downtown Atlanta, and I thought I was in Three Rivers South. It'll happen again. Nobody travels like the Berg. Pittsburgh and Russell Wilson will win the game. It'll be close, but they'll win it outright, and the Falcons' hearts will be broken again.
Maybe I need to buy 2 pies.
It actually won't be a lot of Steelers fans in the house because the game is sold out, and I know a lot of people that have bought season tickets personally. They've re-upped their season tickets. There's going to be some Steelers fans in the house because they're one of the most traveled fan bases in all the NFL. They'll probably bring 15,000, but there's going to be about 60,000 screaming Falcons fans in there, and I can't wait to see it. It's a new era, and when new eras happen, Falcons fans usually come out in mass numbers to start the season. And if they do get beat, well, it'll quickly become a Steelers home game. But I do think the Falcons have addressed their defensive needs with the free agent additions of Judon and Simmons. And I think the Falcons are much better at quarterback. Russell Wilson was let go from a team. He was actually let go from 2 teams, one for Geno Smith and one now for a rookie in Bo Nix. And I think Russell Wilson is getting nipped at behind him with Justin Fields competing him too. So I think there's a lot of pressure in Pittsburgh. I think Arthur Smith is going to come in and he's going to feel the pressure of calling plays against his old team. I always think that's a big deal. But we will see, and we'll see Sunday if there's more Steelers fans or not, Todd. It's that simple.
And you know what? I've been to many of them. Every time there's been more Pittsburgh fans in Atlanta. I would be really surprised if it was worse. Russell Wilson's going to have to prove himself. You mentioned it, playing for 2 different teams now. This is Russell Wilson's time. His career is teetering in the NFL, but the Steelers think a lot of him. They made him one of their 8 captains on the football team. Mike Tomlin's a veteran coach. I don't think that Smith, the play caller for Pittsburgh, feels any pressure at all. He's been there and done that as a play caller. And, Wayne, I tell you what, while we're doing it, you mentioned a pie. We could bet a pie on the game right here, right now. Pie's up. Well, I know you're in Memphis and I'm here, but I think we could get a pie sent. I could get a pie sent to you if Pittsburgh loses, and you can get a pie sent to me if Pittsburgh wins.
Yeah, pretty much. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. But Rams at Lions, first game of the season. Stafford goes back to his homeland where he was drafted. Sunday Night Football, again on NBC and Peacock. Rams go to Detroit. Detroit's 3.5-point favorites. Over-under on this one's 50 and a hook. Todd, we'll let you start this one off, man. Are your Lions covering that?
Well, I'll tell you what, that hook is enticing to pick the Rams, but the Lions were so close. They falconed it in the second half and blew it. Dropped touchdown passes, or dropped first down passes, dropped interceptions. They played as bad as half as you've seen them play all year last year in the NFC Championship game against Frisco. The team knows its mission. Their mission is to get to the Super Bowl and win it. Can they do it? Well, obviously, help is huge. They got to keep golf upright. They have one of the best offensive lines in the football in the NFL. They're going to be a balanced team. The Rams, their former opponent, made the playoffs last year. You know I like Matthew Stafford, the UGA guy, a former Lion, good quarterback in Detroit, to the playoffs 3 times. This is going to be a close game, but I like the Lions to win it by 6.
I think, I don't know if I said it, but Larry is taking the Falcons to cover. Larry's taking the Lions to cover at home. Wayne, what say you?
I'm taking the Lions in this one as well. And a little bit of interesting fact I found out while I was looking at this game is that color on the Detroit Lions is not actually Ford blue. That's called Honolulu blue.
Good information there. I did not know that.
You know what? They've changed the color on their uniform this year to go back to the old Honolulu blue. You'll notice that kind of looking like the Barry Sanders style there.
Right.
So, again, Sunday Night Football on NBC and Peacock. Stafford comes back to the Motor City. I think Karen Williams and the former Michigan Wolverine Blake Corum get going early on the ground. I think Sean McVay, the Georgia boy, Marist High School, Georgia High School Player of the Year, gets his mojo going with his quarterback. Stafford gets all of his wide receivers involved early. I think you see Cooper Kupp early and often. I think you see Puka Nacua early and often. And I think you see Robinson early and often. I think this is going to be a pretty good game. And I like the Lions, the Rams, to go on the road and win this game by a touchdown. I do. So I'm the only one taking Stafford and the Rams, but I think Stafford's going to go full-fledged 1 or 2 more years and then call this thing a career. And I think it starts right here with the win versus former team as the starting quarterback. Guys, that wraps up our show for the week. Todd, go ahead real quick.
No, it's the loudest stadium in the NFL now. You know, false starts are going to be really critical. And you know, the Rams, if the Lions crowd can get the Rams into false start, it was so loud in the preseason. It was sold out in Detroit that when Pittsburgh was trying to go for the winning drive against Detroit, they had 3 false start drives in a preseason game because the crowd was so loud.
That's preseason. Those are guys that aren't on the field all the time. I'm not worried about Stafford.
No, but I mean, it's
crowd. He'll use silent counts and he'll get on the same page against Sean McVay. They use a lot of silent counts. Absolutely, one of the most.
I mean, even Steelers did it with Russell Wilson, and it didn't matter. It was so loud. That'll be an interesting factor of the game. if it's close.
We'll see. I think the Rams take the crowd out pretty early. I want to see the Lions do it 2 years in a row, because in my lifetime, guess what? It hadn't happened in nearly 40 years. So let's go on to our final thought. My final thought is pretty simple. There's a tragedy in the state of Georgia today. My thoughts and prayers go out to the victims and families that were affected by today's school shooting at Appalachian High School. I just wanted to say thank goodness that it could have been way worse. The authorities and first responders got there quickly, and I'm just thankful I have a friend that's a basketball coach there, and I'm just been deeply affected by this today. So thoughts and prayers go out to the victims and families of Appalachian High School. Guys, your final thought.
Yeah, that's
my thoughts and prayers are with them too. I mean, there's no question about it. Anytime you have a tragedy like this, could you imagine being a parent of one of those kids waiting to see if your child was okay? Could you imagine being a spouse of one of the teachers that was killed? I mean, this stuff has got to stop in America, and I'm praying and hoping this is the last one. Well, my final thought is regards to Georgia football. JJ, you're gonna love this. That defense was really, 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 really good in the second half. And that offensive line wore down Clemson's really, really good defense. And Georgia looked like the best team after week 1 in college football. But we have a long, long way to go. And with a 12-team playoff, anything can happen. I think this will be the most wide-open year in the history of college football because of that playoff.
Wayne, take us away, buddy.
Well, this weekend we've got the visiting Troy team from Alabama coming up here to Memphis to play in the under renovation Liberty Bowl, the Simmons Liberty Bowl, I should call it. If you watch on TV, if you get to see any clips, you'll see that it's a lot of missing Liberty Bowl.
Kind of like Vandy Memorial Stadium right now. A lot of construction in Tennessee going on, Wayne. You guys are rebuilding stadiums left and right. The Titans are getting a new one. Memphis is getting a new one. Vandy's building on theirs. It's just construction in Football City over there in Tennessee. Well, guys, that wraps our show up. For Todd in the Woodstock area, Wayne in Memphis, Larry, who's in Adairsville calling a high school softball game, for me right here in Lilburn, Georgia, reminding you guys, enjoy the full weekend of college football this weekend. We'll see you next week.